Hey everybody, it's Jared Barlow with the Blue and Gray Educational Society, and y'all probably know who this guest is right here. He's been on our stuff several times now. This is Mr. Aaron Siever from Aaron Civil Warrior Travels. Aaron, how are things up in Newmarket tonight?
Oh, nice actually. It's a nice cool night. We're starting to get into that fall season, which I absolutely love here in the valley. All the color and everything that gets to come out. So it's still hot during the day though. So if I could get it down in the 70s, I'd be very happy.
You're right. The fall in the Shenandoah Valley is one of the most beautiful sights, I think in America. So
It
I
is.
I'm very jealous of you that you get to live up in the valley.
Yeah, it's
Um,
literally, I have the mountains of nothing right outside my window here, so I can look at it. Well, it's dark right now, but I can look at it and see it during the day, which is pretty nice.
Well, like I said, if you watch our videos before, you know who Aaron is. You know he's a great storyteller, and he's back tonight to talk about one of my. I would say it's growing on me as one of my more favorite battles in the valley, and that's the lesser known Battle of Piedmont, which took place in June of 1864. And I say lesser known because it kind of gets overshadowed by Newmarket, obviously, uh, but that and to me, or I guess it's sandwiched in between Newmarket and Lynchburg. So
Mhm.
it kind of loses some of the appeal because of those two. Um, but um, Aaron, I think a good place to start talking about the Battle of Piedmont is I think we should take it all the way back to March of 1864 with Grant taking over as the Federal Forces commander, the commander of all the forces of the Union Army, and I think that's a good place to start tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, I would totally agree. I feel like that you have to kind of get that overall to understand why the Battle of Piedmont happens. And you're right, between Newmarket and Lynchburg, and then you get overshadowed with Jubal Early's raid on Washington, and then Sheridan comes into the valley. So it gets lost, but it's a very important battle, especially here in the Shenandoah Valley. So just a little bit about the valley is this is the valley of embarrassment. This is nothing has went right for the Union Army here, save for one small battle at Kernstown in 1862, and that battle still ended up, even though it was a Union victory, it caused more havoc on the Union side than it did on the Confederate side. So really, it's just a complete embarrassment here in the Valley. They have really never won anything. Um, so Grant, Ulysses S. Grant, very successful general out west, captures Vicksburg, Forts Henry and Donelson, unconditional surrender grant. Um, just kind of a man's man, so to speak. He's an Ohioan, um, but a very good general in a lot of ways. And a lot of people will say when he gets to Virginia, he's kind of a war of attrition, but he's smart. He knows how to flank the armies. He knows how to use his troops. So it's not just he's not just a guy that's going to go and slam into you. But Lincoln likes him. There's reports of him drinking and everything, and Lincoln, saying, "Well, find out what kind of whiskey he's drinking because I want to send my other generals that because he fights. I can't get rid of him. He fights." And and I have that. I got a great shirt at the Appomattox Civil War Museum down there that actually has that quote on it from Lincoln. I love it. Generally wear it when I go on the Battlefields and Bourbon podcast because it's bourbon whiskey. It's a good thing to have.
Right, right, right.
Good quote to have on your shirt. But yeah, so Lincoln really likes Grant, and so he's going to bring him east and give him control of all the Union army. He's going to be made a lieutenant general, and he's going to be in control of the armies in the east, west, the Trans Mississippi, all Union forces. Um, he is not going to be a general that stays in D.C. He's going to want to go with the army, and the principal army at this time is the Army of the Potomac. And he's going to do a strategy. His thought process is to do this strategy of pressing the Confederate forces as much as he can on all fronts. If I'm the Union Army and I do that, I can make them stretch thin. I can make them use their supplies, and the pressure is really on. They'll be in a defensive mode, but they don't have the troops to be able to cover this mass movement. One of those movements will be here in the Shenandoah Valley. Um, Now, under command of the forces here in the valley is a guy named Franz Siegel, German immigrant. Um, really not a great offensive general. I know you had Dave Powell on,
Right.
and I spoke briefly to Dave about Franz Siegel, and I can relate to. He's not a terrible general. Uh,
Right.
However, he is not offensive minded. He is a very defensive minded general.
I feel bad for Siegel every day but May 15th.
Yes, yes. And just to kind of point out what I'm talking about with him being such a good defensive general, Battle of Pea Ridge in 1862, he thinks that army is retreating. And so he does one heck of a performance in March of 1862 with artillery and things until he finds out they're not retreating. Beautiful performance. Wilson Creek, or in 1861, Wilson's Creek, same type of deal. He thinks they're retreating. He'll do well. Second Manassas, they are retreating, and he will hold the rear of the army along with Robert Milroy. He'll do good. Um, but when it comes to offensive strategy, he is not the guy you really want. However, that's who Grant has in the Valley, and at this point, he really doesn't have anybody else. And the Valley is one of many prongs that he is sending toward the South. So Grant will decide. He'll give Siegel his orders to march uh, up the Shenandoah Valley towards Stanton. With the idea is to capture Stanton and possibly move on down to Lynchburg or wherever, or possibly across the mountain into Lee's rear. Grant's not super confident that Siegel can do this, but if he can be here in the valley and occupy enough forces, then he'll do his job. I believe Grant actually says that he might not be able to skin the animal, but maybe he can hold the leg while someone else does the skinning. Unfortunately, on May 15th of 1864, Franz Siegel will not be able to hold that leg. That leg will be taken from him by John C. Breckinridge of the Confederate Army, former vice president, here at the Battle of New Market, really right outside my window. And that battle will be the end of Franz Siegel in the Shenandoah Valley. Just a few days later, he'll be relieved. It's a major Confederate victory, another embarrassing loss for the Union Army. Valley of embarrassment. So, yeah, they've got another setback. In the meantime, Grant is moving his forces south toward Richmond. He's been pushing Lee through the wilderness, Spotsylvania, heavy fighting, tons of casualties. Once Breckinridge is able to defeat Siegel here in New Market, it's going to seem as if Siegel's going to lick his wounds. He's going to retreat back up the valley toward Winchester, and it'll be as if kind of what was thought before. Breckinridge will actually even be looked on as the next Stonewall Jackson for a little while. He will be brought east to help Lee out around Richmond with his forces, and he will actually win another battle at Hanover Courthouse, just a small little battle protecting the railroad there. So he'll get even more, bolstered. One of the things that'll happen there is you have this guy named John D. Bowden. He's a Valley resident from Augusta County. He has been here in the Valley. He's in charge of the cavalry. He was in charge before Breckinridge got here. Now Breckinridge is gone. He's in charge again. But he only has a small force of cavalry. One of his units is what he would say is his best unit, the 62nd Virginia, will actually go with Breckinridge. So it's going to leave him with even less. At that point, the Confederates are not thinking that there's going to be any more movement or much movement out of the Federals here in the Valley. They've been defeated again, and things have shifted back toward Richmond. Plus, you've got everything going on out west. That's not the case. Grant will ask for another officer to be put in command here in the Valley, and Henry Halleck will suggest David Hunter. Hunter is a strict disciplinarian, an abolitionist. he grew up in a church setting, religious setting, so very very strict growing up, and he uses that as he goes into the military, graduates from West Point. He'll be known as Black Dave because of some of the things he'll incorporate. He will emancipate slaves before the Emancipation Proclamation. That will be knocked down by Lincoln, as at the time uh, it could have been detrimental to the political movements of things. You know, Lincoln's got to look at the whole picture, where Hunter's just looking at this one spot. He will also be the first one to make a black regiment. Uh, he will have a black regiment that will kind of come with some. Lincoln will not be exactly happy about it because he doesn't have permission to do it. And those at that time, he's still trying to teeter that line to keep the border states within the Union. But that regiment will happen, and it will continue. So Hunter's already done a lot. He'll get a command out west. He hates it, doesn't want to be there. He will be offered the command all the way out west in like California. He says, I don't want that. He will actually be a liaison to Grant for a little while. And I should back up just a little bit. He has a good relationship with Lincoln as well, because he's warned Lincoln about assassination attempts and things when Lincoln became president, and while he was on the circuit of campaigning, which wasn't a lot, but while he was doing some campaigning, talks and things, Hunter was there and was giving him information about it. So he's kind of got an intimate relationship with Lincoln already. But then he will be sent to go and check on Ulysses S. Grant, see what he's doing, get his opinions, and he will become a friend of Grant. He loves Grant. And when he's offered command out west, he says, I want to be with U.S. Grant. So they will bring him east. He'll also at one point be sent down to monitor another Valley general, Nathaniel Banks, in his Red River campaign. So Hunter's been around.
Right.
So he'll come here into the Valley. When Halleck suggests that, Grant jumps all over it, says, "Yeah, absolutely. Put Hunter. I don't care. Put Hunter or anybody but Sigel, really. In command. Hunter's a great choice." And David Hunter will. I mean, we're talking by May 21st. He is in command of the Shenandoah Valley Army for the Union, and he is going to start moving right away. He's not going to sit back and wait. This is going to cause alarm for the Confederates, because this guy has gotten this army, and this is a defeated army, but still a very much intact army. He was going to start moving south, moving up the valley towards Stanton. In the meantime, opposing him is Imboden. No one else is here in the valley. Imboden will say he has about 3,000 troops. In reality, he's probably got about 1,200. And then you can count the home guard and things like that. So maybe he gets up to 3,000, but experienced troops probably about 1,200.
Right. And it's important to note, right, right here, that this is the major part of Grant's strategy, because the Confederates have not had to defend Richmond and the Valley at the same time.
Yeah.
And Grant knows that. So he has to have a mobile force in the Valley to take some of that heat off of him. And if the Confederates don't want to fight out there, then he gets Stanton and cuts the rails all to himself.
It's the railroads, cuts, and we tend to forget too, during Seal's approach and this approach, there's going to be stuff in southwestern Virginia happening as well, kind of coming up in the rear of those Valley armies that never really comes to a full fruition. But it's still a thing they have to be conscious of. But with Breckinridge down at Richmond now, Imboden will say, hey, I've got a large Union force coming up the valley toward me. I'm going to do all I can to stop them, but I'm going to need some reinforcements. Unfortunately, he is not going to be able to get those reinforcements. Lee is going to say, I have nothing to send you. You're going to have to call out the home guard, do what you can. In the meantime, let's shift to Southwest Virginia. Again, Breckinridge, who was in command there, has left. And there's a guy that will be the overall commander of the Confederate Army at Piedmont, and that'll be a William Jones. Now, I didn't say his nickname yet because I want to talk about why he gets a nickname. Um, William Jones, Confederate general. He was a farmer before this. He was in the military before he was a farmer. Um, he raised the company. He will get in kind of some matches with Jeb Stuart as far as they'll go back and forth. They don't get along. The Battle of Brandy Station will be a great example, as Jones will have notified Stuart that the Union troops have crossed the river and are coming. And Stuart says, "Tell Jones to deal with the troops in his front, and I'll deal with the troops here." And he says, so he thinks they're not coming. Well, he'll damn sure find out soon. So Jones is pretty mad about that. But so I'm getting to the point where we can kind of see he's butting heads with his superiors. He will be court-martialed by Stuart, and that court-martial will actually go through, and he'll be shipped to Southwest Virginia. On top of it, if we go back to what makes him grumpy, we could say it really starts when he gets married, and while on a ship, his wife is swept overboard and drowns and dies. Um, they really haven't. I mean, I think it's on their honeymoon. So he becomes basically a hermit at this point and grumpy. So he will get the moniker of Grumble Jones. So we'll have William Grumble Jones, because after that he is a cantankerous man. He's not someone that anyone wants to really deal with. He's opinionated, but he's one heck of a fighter. He's actually, Stewart will even say he's one of his best cavaliers, especially out on a scout. If he is protecting your fords or whatever, Jones is the guy you want to have there. His men respect him, but he is also a very, very strict disciplinarian. Um, so Jones will be in Southwest Virginia. He will technically take command of those forces in Southwest Virginia and Eastern Tennessee before he's actually given the command. He will write to Richmond and to Lee several times about, hey, who's in command here? Do I have command of this district or not? Eventually, he will get that notification that, yes, he is in command of that district, and he will be sent to the Shenandoah Valley. He will tell Imboden that he is coming with 3,000 troops. So if we have Imboden's 3,000 and we have 3,000 from Jones, and we got like 6,000 troops, that's more than they had at Newmarket. In reality, they still will have more than they had at Newmarket, but not by much. We're still going to have probably about 4,500 troops total. And a lot of these units will be home guard units and also just bits and pieces of regiments. We're going to have battalions and companies, things like that. We're not going to have these massive units that are cohesioned and have been working together. We're going to have a lot of convalescents. There's going to be a hodgepodge of people, even more than what the Confederates had at Newmarket. At least at Newmarket, they had more organized units that were brought together. As we're approaching Piedmont, it's a little bit of everything coming for with Jones and with Imboden.
So it's essentially the JV team.
Yeah, it's the B squad.
Because when Breckinridge takes his forces north, he obviously takes the best he can with him, and then those forces now in Richmond. So Grumble Jones has essentially just what's left.
What's left, yeah, and he still has to leave some force down near Lynchburg to combat Union troops coming from the west through Western Virginia and West Virginia into the valley, and keep them from taking Lynchburg and coming up on the rear of Stanton while he marches down the valley toward Winchester and toward where Hunter's at. In the meantime, Hunter has started to slow just a little bit. He will make some. It's another reason he gets the name Black Dave. He will make some proclamations. He is tired of the guerrillas and bushwhackers hitting his supply trains and things like that. At one point, he's going to order the town of Newtown to be burned to the ground. At first, he's going to order houses that were housing guerrillas and bushwhackers to be destroyed. And eventually, after that, after another incident happens, he's going to say, look, we're gonna burn the town and everything within a 5-mile radius. Um, that will not happen based on at this time the troops are still very much against that type of warfare. They have burned houses and things like that, but it's not been they haven't burned entire towns. They haven't it's they're still the humanity of it is still there. They're looking at all these old people and things in Newtown going, they didn't do anything really. Um, and and they gave up the people that had housed these bushwhackers. Um, so that's going to be a thing of contention between one of the cavalry commanders and Hunter, which he and I'm his name is escaping me right now, but he will actually, when he approaches Hunter, will come in a huff and will tell him I didn't, we didn't follow the order and and he's like all up in his face about it. And
Sure.
while Hunter is mad, he kind of likes it. He gets respect of that. So that guy doesn't get dismissed. He'll also have a friend, David Hunter Strother, who is David Hunter's cousin. Starts getting weird. Um, but Strother had been with Siegel. He's just on the staff, and he will become the chief of staff for Hunter. And so several times, David Strother will go to Hunter and be like, "Oh, well, here's why the guys did this, or this isn't quite what we should do." And Hunter will listen to him for the most part. There's going to be some times he doesn't,
Right.
but uh, just kind of giving you an idea who David Hunter really is. He is a hard fighter. Um, he has pretty close to 12,000 men coming down the pike. And when I say the pike, I mean the Valley Pike coming up the pike. Um, they are marching toward Harrisonburg as Jones is starting to move toward the Shenandoah Valley and toward Stanton. And Bowden is doing his best to delay Hunter's advance. They'll fight at Lacey Springs, not far from where I'm at right now, probably about, I don't know, 10 miles maybe. They'll fight outside of Harrisonburg, which Lacey Springs is outside of Harrisonburg as well, but they'll be driven through Harrisonburg. And Bowden knows from really New Market back, there's not a great defensive spot for him to set up. He cannot fight David Hunter out in the open with this massive Union army. He'll get destroyed. He's going to find a great defensive spot outside of the town of Mount Crawford, which is on the south side of Harrisonburg. And he'll set up a defense there along the river, and it's a good defense. He's got some height there, and he will try to entice Hunter to attack him there, as he can, saw the Confederates do it for all this time, where they've been vastly outnumbered, but in a defensive position, they've been very good. And when they have that advantage, the things get pretty equal. So Jones, in the meantime, will arrive, and I think he'll get there in just a few days. Like it's pretty amazing how fast, once he gets the order, gets the forces together, how quickly he gets to the Shenandoah Valley and to the area of Stanton and then Mount Crawford. I almost have to think that he's got to be extremely fatigued at this point. It reminds me of Stonewall Jackson in 1862 with all the moving around and stuff. We often, as historians, look at that when he goes to Richmond later, maybe he was fatigued, that could be one of the factors, and it probably was. I can't imagine that Jones is any less fatigued on this march to Mount Crawford.
Right. To put it in perspective, if you follow I-81,
Yeah.
the exits for like Abingdon-ish area are exits 19 and 17, whereas Stanton is like 220.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, you're covering about 200 miles.
Yeah. In just a few days. I mean, pretty
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
And they will be able to use the trains and things like that at times, but they're not going to do that the whole way because they have to change trains. The Confederate railroads are different gauges here in the South, so it's not like you can just go from Baltimore to Harper's Ferry. You couldn't do it in the South. You'd probably change trains 3 or 4 times. So yeah, Jones makes one heck of a march with his men, and will get here roughly. I think it's around June 3rd that they'll start kind of showing up. Really, by June 4th, he will be here and understanding what Imboden's got set up at Mount Crawford. In the meantime, Hunter and his staff will decide they're going to sidestep the Confederates. Why attack them at Mount Crawford in a great defensive position? They're going to move down to Port Republic, Stonewall Jackson's old stomping grounds. He'll get down there, and this is before, this is, I want to say this is June 3rd. Around that time, they'll get down there, and when they get to Port Republic, they have to rebuild the bridge because the bridge had been burned in 1862. The materials, it's just going to be kind of a chaotic situation. They're not going to have the right materials or the tools. They're going to make this makeshift bridge that the guys that are making the bridge actually don't know how to make it. So it's just a disaster, and it's going to delay them quite a few hours. And Hunter will be so nervous about this bridge, he'll actually sit along the bridge as the troops are going over, watching their steps and telling them to step out of place so that they're more even and don't fall in the water and the bridge is break. He does not like the bridge and is very scared of it, but his troops will make it across. They'll get into Port Republic. In the meantime, now that Imboden and Jones have figured out Hunter's not coming, they're very surprised. They're ready for a battle. Battle doesn't happen. They start figuring out, oh my goodness, Hunter's moving toward Port Republic. Because of the delay, they are able to shift their forces over toward that area as well, toward the area of Mount Meridian. And Jones and Imboden are going to have a discussion about going to a place called Maury Hill. Imboden is familiar with the area. He grew up. He knows every nook and cranny of Augusta County, every back road. He's been in the valley pretty much the whole time, save for a couple things, Gettysburg and things like that. But he knows where he's at. He knows where the good terrain is. And so he's going to tell Jones that they need to go to this Maury Hill. It's the best defensive position. Jones will agree and begin movements that way. Imboden will leave to kind of screen that movement and keep an eye on Hunter toward Port Republic, as they both decided Hunter's probably going to go into camp outside of Port Republic after the debacle at the bridge, and they're going to be right. He's going to go into camp. It's going to be kind of rainy. And Hunter still thinks he's got the drop on him. So the Confederates will start moving. Imboden doesn't know that Jones is going to change the plan. Jones, as he's going, will decide not to go to the hill that Imboden suggests, because as he's looking at the map, he sees that Hunter could simply go around him again and just avoid a battle and move past him to Stanton. So he looks for a place that's really going to block, in his opinion, Hunter's movement towards Stanton. Along the Stanton Road will be the little village of Piedmont, or New Hope. And that is where Jones is going to start moving his forces toward. In the meantime, the cavalry the next morning is going to start skirmishing. And you'll have Imboden with some of his cavalry units. I believe it's the 18th Virginia that will actually open the fighting, as they'll clash with some Union New Yorkers at a place called Mount Meridian. And this was a place where Stonewall Jackson had actually camped in 1862. And that, I'm sorry, it's not the 18th that'll be doing that. It's the other unit that Imboden has. I can't recall who that is right off the top of my head at the moment. The 18th will come up a little bit later. But the fighting is going to go back and forth at Mount Meridian, and the Union troops are going to be able to push the Confederate cavalry back. They'll push them back to a place called Bonnie Doon. And that Bonnie Doon is where Imboden will be. The 18th Virginia will be there and come into line about 6 a.m. And we're going to have one heck of a battle, really starting with the cavalry there. And there's going to be several different incidents that happen. And some of this I just absolutely love. On the Union side, uh, as you're going to have a Union lieutenant named Savcool. Now it's rainy. Um, it's so it again for some reason here in the valley these battles are fought in the rain, at least in this 1864, and it's hard to see things, hard to understand some stuff. So Savcool, he's dressed in a light rubber coat to keep the rain off of him. He looks like a Reb. He will actually find himself in rebel lines. Um, the rebels will charge his unit and he'll charge with them. And when they stop at a tree line because they are, shooting back and forth, he just continues to his lines and then turns around and fights the Confederates. He gets to safety, and it's like, what? you know,
Kind
um,
of sounds like a polk at Perryville right
yeah,
there.
Polk at Perryville, where he, commands the guys. We talked about that on the battlefields in Bourbon, where he commands the Union troops to stop firing, and they do it. So just this was a Union guy this time. On the opposite side, you're going to have Captain John Opie on the Confederate side, and he's going to be in charge of some home guards, and he's going to tell them that if they have to run, he will be the first to start, and they should run with him. But if anyone starts before he starts running, he is going to shoot them. Now that line is going to hold based on that. So um, they didn't want to mess with Captain Opie, and what a cool name. Opie is just I just love that name for some weird reason. But you're going to have this cavalry battle really going back and forth, and eventually the Union troops are going to overtake the cavalry. Actually, they'll almost capture John and Bowden. They will capture his brother, Frank and Bowden, and it's just one heck of a cavalry battle at Mount Meridian and Bonnie Doon. In the meantime, Jones's infantry is starting to come up and come online. Again, we have a lot of home guards and things like that. The Union infantry is starting to move up. As the cavalry starts to move forward, they're going to stop as artillery is really going to wreak havoc on them, and they're going to wait for Hunter and the infantry to come up. We're now getting into a full-scale battle. One thing that Jones had told in Bowden was don't risk a major battle. That's exactly what Imboden ends up doing, is getting into a major scrap. So this is where Jones will now make this Piedmont line near a place called Walker Lane. Um, he will he's got the river or Middle River to his left and some heights, and then it's kind of an open field to his right. And he thinks this is a good place to fight. Now, Imboden will say later in years, well after Jones's is demise and everything, so he'll meet his demise here at Piedmont, but he'll say that he protested this position because he had suggested uh, Maury Hill, and he'll say that he protested this position and that he and Jones argued back and forth, and Jones said, "I believe I'm in command." And he said, "You are, and I'll follow your orders." All this stuff, and but says that if the blame's going to be placed, it will be placed on who he who's in the wrong. All this stuff. Whether that happened or not, we don't really know. We do know a lot of soldiers embellish some things after the fact, especially when their counterparts are dead and they can't really defend themselves. I can't say that it didn't happen, or at least some version of it. I would say probably some version of it, as Imboden is from this area, but probably not to the extent that he says it. But one thing that Jones apparently will say is that uh, he doesn't want advantageous terrain. He can whip Hunter anywhere, and whip him he will. That's not exactly going to happen. But when Jones is setting up his line of defense, he's going to notice some glaring issues. One, home guard. These are not guys that have fought a lot. As a matter of fact, my relative, my great grandfather, will fight at Piedmont as a home guard. He has never, from what I could see, had never been in any type of combat. He was in the 4th Virginia Home Guard out of Augusta, Bath and Augusta. Um, I think from what I've gathered, he fires maybe like 2 shots, and then he's done. He's out of there. He's a farmer. He's an old farmer too. He's not a young man. But we have old and young men fighting. There will be a battery of artillery that will be in the Confederate command that will be manned by like 13, 14, 15 year olds. And they'll actually do some pretty good work. But it's just not the type of force you want to face a veteran Union Army with. And that's what they're doing. So you have all that. In the meantime, another little interesting anecdote. I'm sure most people that'll watch this or interested in history have heard of the Hatfields and McCoys feud. West Virginia, the Hatfields and McCoys, after the Civil War, will be in their own little war with each other in West Virginia over multiple different things. Go to Gatlinburg, they've got a great little comedy show with the Hatfields and McCoys that is not historically accurate, but the food's pretty darn good. And the show's funny. But I find it ironic that we have Hatfields and McCoys here at the Battle of Piedmont, the 36th Virginia. We're going to have 17 Hatfields and 11 McCoys in that unit. So just, another little weird piece of history that'll, progress later. But back to the battle. Hunter is going to start advancing his troops. As he does, the Confederates are going to put up some pretty stiff resistance, but Hunter is going to be able to push his units really hard against the Confederates. There's going to be a hole in the line that will get filled for a little while, and then another one. It's just going to continuously. At one point, I think they're like 300 yards apart. So we're going to have this hole opening up, and the Union forces are just overwhelming. You've got guys named, under Joseph Thoburn who are going to attack the opening in that Confederate line and seize the day. And you're going to have General Jones charge into the melee, and he'll be killed during the Battle of Piedmont. And it's pretty heavy loss for the Confederates. And confusion's going to start to happen. The home guards are not going to be able to hold. It's just going to be, at that point, kind of a rout. The Confederates will hold for quite a while, fighting the Union troops that are advancing, but they just don't have the forces to compete with what's facing them. And Hunter's going to do a good job of of getting his forces in line, keeping them in a good position, and advancing them in a way that is advantageous, not just to him, but also using the ground that he has. With the death of Jones there at Piedmont, it's a pretty terrible thing for the Confederates. It's kind of the nail in the coffin. That hole in the line is going to be over. It's between the Augusta Reserve, which was where my grandfather was, and the 39th Tennessee. And I forgot to mention those guys under Vaughn. These guys it's about 800 troops that are going to show up here in the valley from Tennessee and fight, here at Piedmont. Most of the other units, you will have the 1st Tennessee as well, but most of the other units are going to be Virginia units. But that Middle River line is not going to be able to hold as Hunter is he's going to try to flank the Confederates, which he will do. And then as the hole opens up with the Augusta Reserves, the 34th Massachusetts is actually going to be able to push their way into that opening, and that'll basically end the battle. The thing with this is that although Jones puts up a heck of a fight there, this is it's a good defense, but it's major for the Union Army. This is their first big victory. This is a major victory. Stanton, the way to Stanton is open. There's nothing in between them, as these guys have to retreat. There's nothing in between them to stop them from going, to Stanton. And that's exactly what they're going to do. Hunter will go and he'll capture Stanton, um, chasing in Bowden the whole time. And Bowden's going to try to, what forces he has, try to kind of stop the movement or, slow it down. It doesn't really work. Um, but this victory just bolsters these troops, and you have to think these are guys that just lost the Battle of Newmarket, and Hunter's not going to use all his men in this battle. He's not going to have to, um, as he can push past and do his thing. This is going to be one of the bloodiest battles in the Shenandoah Valley. You're going to have around 800 Union casualties and roughly close to 1,500 Confederates. So pretty pretty bloody battle for a small
Right.
battle here in the Shenandoah Valley. Jones, as I said, he's going to repulse two major assaults there at Piedmont before he will meet his demise. Once Hunter gets to Stanton, he's going to damage the Virginia Central Railroad, destroy a bunch of shops, warehouses, things like that. There's not really any resistance to him. He'll continue on to Lexington, where he will, in retaliation for the Battle of Newmarket, will burn the Virginia Military Institute. The barracks there and some of the homes around. He'll continue down to Lynchburg, where he will attempt to capture Lynchburg. And that'll be a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'll just go ahead and do a spot. He gets stopped in Lynchburg. He and then somehow takes his army out of the war for a month. But anyway, that's a whole another
Oh
thing.
yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
The importance of the Battle of Piedmont, though, is just massive with the Union Army here in the Valley. It is no longer the Valley of Embarrassment. It is now, and they've done what they wanted to do. Now it will go back to the Valley of Embarrassment maybe a little bit after Piedmont, after Lynchburg, but in the meantime, Hunter's done something that no other Union general has been able to do in the Shenandoah Valley, and that's advance south all the way to Lynchburg.
Right.
And it's so weird that this battle gets overlooked so much. There's some good books out there that talk about Piedmont.
Right.
Uh, One of the best book out there is definitely the book by Scott Patchen. Is he talks about Hunter's raid, specifically about the Battle of Piedmont and then his raid on Stanton.
Right.
There's another book called Lee's Endangered Left: The Civil War in Western Virginia in the spring of 1864 by Richard Duncan. Great um, great descriptions in there of what's going on at Piedmont. Um, and there's a few others out there, but it's a largely overlooked battle, and it's one of probably the I would say the most important battle at this time in the Shenandoah Valley. Without this battle, who knows what happens later in 64? Who knows if they lose here, does Grant continue to try to force troops down the throats of the Confederates in the valley? Or does
Right.
he send a whole lot more troops in? Who knows? And we always hate what ifs, but what if?
Right.
Yeah, I can't overstate enough how important Piedmont really is here in the Shenandoah Valley. The ground out there is still very pristine. There are modern houses and things. The Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation, National Historic District, has done a great job of preserving battlefield land out there. And I know they're going to be doing some trails and things like that. There's some parking lots, so you can actually go to Piedmont now and have somewhat of a visitor experience. And you can stand, where the Confederates were, and you'll be able to stand where the Union troops were, and really get a feel for the terrain and the battle as it's happening.
Right. And that was one thing I was going to say that is the reason that I love Piedmont is if you go there today, of course, like you said, there's parking lots and stuff there, which weren't there, a year ago. But
Yes,
if you go there today, it's a lot of farmland, but that's exactly what it was back then.
absolutely.
It's not developed anywhere. Like you're driving down a little small 2-lane road. There's, not really much to see. Like you think you're lost for a little bit, and then you come across this battlefield.
Yeah.
To me, like I love it so much because it looks exactly like it would have back in
Absolutely.
1864.
And as you come off of the road to Weir's Cave between Grottoes and Weir's Cave, right there is Mount Meridian. So you start technically on the battlefield as soon as you turn on to the road there to go to Piedmont. Um, and you'll go up, you'll pass Bonnie Doon, it's still there, and you'll go out and then you'll hit Battlefield Road, and but all of that through there is battlefield land. The cavalry fighting is happening there, back and forth all the way to the line that Jones established at Piedmont. So yeah, shout out to the Valley Battlefield Foundation for the preservation out there and the uh, visitor experience that they are going to be making out there. I'm looking forward to that. As that's another uh, battlefield that'll be open to the public, and as a former employee there, um, really excited to have been a part of that.
Right. And also, I appreciate your shout out to Blue and Gray board member Scott Patchen.
Yes,
His book here, The Battle of Piedmont and Hunter's Raid on Stanton. But also, he did one earlier called The Forgotten Fury, um,
yes,
which
good
is
book.
the Battle of Piedmont. So, shout out to Scott for doing that. And we're recording this in September of 24. Scott is actually leading a tour of the early part of 1864's campaign from Newmarket on through Lynchburg this November for us. So if you want to come and actually walk the battlefields and hear these stories straight from Scott, sign up for those tours. What better source than to hear it from the guy who literally wrote the book about it?
Absolutely, and I've been on tours with Scott before. Scott does an amazing job. He's one of my favorites to go out with and listen to, and he's very passionate about it. And that's one of the best things about a tour guide is if they're passionate and into it, man, it makes you passionate and into it. So I've
Right.
been on. I've heard Scott talk about Piedmont and been on some other battlefields with him, and he's very one of the top tour guides in my opinion.
And speaking of tours, let's wrap this up with talking about your new venture, Aaron Civil War Travels.
Yeah, so I've had some life changes that have happened, but I've always wanted to give tours and talks, and um, after speaking with my wife, who is my biggest supporter of all time, no matter what I do, shout out to her. Um,
Right, right.
we decided with our path right now that life was taking us that this was a good opportunity to branch out and start my own business. So I've started Aaron Civil War Travels LLC, where we will be working on giving tours, speaking at Civil War roundtables, things like that. And it's not just restricted here to the Valley. Um, I plan to go anywhere, really, and give a tour. I've studied a ton of things for the Civil War, a ton of battlefields. There's a lot of battlefields I've been to, a lot of places I've been to. A lot of people haven't, just because I like those little spots that are kind of off the beaten path. Uh, but I also look forward to it as it gives me a chance to go out back on those battlefields and tour them. We just did a tour here in Newmarket last week. Had a pretty good tour with some a 4-H club here, a local 4-H club, um, which and pretty good turnout for that here at Newmarket. So I was very pleased with that, and that's just where my passion's always been with this. And why not make the leap and take a chance on it? And we've got some good things coming down the pike. I say we because my wife's probably going to be my boss.
Always,
She
always.
generally steers me in the right direction. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Very excited. We've got a website up. It's a Google website. You can find me on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. I'm going to try to get the Instagram working better. Um, I'm not as tech savvy as I used to be. Things have kind of progressed past me a little bit, as we saw when we were starting this. but yeah, I'm very excited about this new venture, and I think it's going to be a fun time, and I hope people will come out on the battlefields with me, and hopefully we can learn something and learn together at the same time.
Well, I will go on the record as saying this. Like you, I've been to a lot of battlefields. Taking lots of tours. Both with official tour guides, self-guided, audio guides, everything. And I've taken my wife on a lot of those as she's been, pretty interested in Civil War stuff, not necessarily to the level of, you or I,
Yeah.
specifically, but I will say that, if you're looking for an endorsement, my wife loved walking the battlefields with Aaron. She could care less about, hearing 3 hours about the Battle of Antietam, but walking the battlefields and hearing the stories with Aaron, she loved that. You know, she said that she far enjoyed that more than anything that we've ever done. So there's my, plug for Aaron. I love him because he's super knowledgeable, super in depth, super great storyteller, but also my wife loved him. So,
Yeah,
that's
that's the
win
Marlowe
win.
I'm worried about anyway.
Exactly. Well, Aaron, I appreciate you spending some time with us tonight. Like I said, we'll check out Aaron's Civil War travels. We'll put some links below so you can check him out. And now we have both been on the Battlefields and Bourbon podcast, so you can check us out there
Right.
too.
That's
Uh,
right. Yeah. We've got the Perryville episodes out with both of us on it, and there may be
yeah,
another one coming out. So
yeah, there might be one closer to my neck of the woods coming out
yeah, a
soon.
little bit closer where you're at.
Well, thank you so much, Aaron. Like I said, check out his stuff and make sure that if you're going out on a battlefield, that he's your tour guide. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Jared. I appreciate it.